Linda's grandmother gave her $10,000 when she graduated from college in 2014. It was a life-changing gift, more money than Linda had ever seen in one place. Her grandmother told her to put it somewhere safe, not to gamble it on stocks or anything risky, just to keep it for emergencies or a down payment someday. Linda did exactly what her grandmother said. She opened a savings account at her local bank, the same bank her grandmother had used for 50 years, and deposited the $10,000. She checked the balance occasionally, watching it grow by a few dollars each month from the interest. The account paid 0.06% annually, which added about $6 per year, but that was fine. The money was safe. It was not going anywhere. It was not at risk. For 10 years, Linda felt responsible and prudent, comforted by the knowledge that her $10,000 was sitting there, untouched, waiting for when she needed it. Then, in 2024, Linda decided to buy a used car. She went to the dealership, found a reliable Honda Civic, and prepared to make a down payment from her grandmother's gift. The car she wanted cost $22,000. 10 years ago, that same car, same model, same condition, same mileage would have cost $14,000. Linda looked at her savings account balance, $10.63. A decade of accumulated interest had added $63 to her grandmother's gift. But the car that $10,000 could have nearly covered in 2014 now required $12,000 more than she had. Her money had not grown. The world had gotten more expensive around it. And sitting in that dealership doing math she had never done before, Linda realized something that made her stomach drop. Her grandmother's gift had not been sitting safely in the bank for 10 years. It had been slowly dying there. The number stayed the same. The purchasing power, the thing the money could actually do, had collapsed by nearly 30%. Her safe money was not safe at all. It was a melting ice cube disguised as a solid foundation, and nobody had ever told her. My name is Bobby, and I spend way too much time thinking about why the safest feeling place to put your money is actually one of the most dangerous. If you have cash sitting in a savings account because you want to protect it. If you check your balance and feel comforted by a number that never goes down. If you believe that not investing is the cautious choice, make sure to hit that subscribe button. What I'm about to show you is how inflation silently steals your wealth every single day, why your bank is profiting from your caution, and how the money you think you are saving is actually disappearing. I call it the savings account illusion, and it is one of the most expensive lies in personal finance. Not because anyone is actively deceiving you, but because the decay is invisible until it is too late. Here's the fundamental thing you need to understand about money. A dollar is not a unit of value. It is a unit of purchasing power. And purchasing power is not stable. It erodes constantly, predictably, and mercilessly through a process called inflation. When most people think about their savings, they think in nominal terms. The actual number in the account. Linda's account showed $10.63, and that number felt real, solid, permanent. But nominal value is an illusion. What matters is real value. What your money can actually buy in the world. And real value is determined by the relationship between your dollars and the prices of everything those dollars might purchase. Between 2014 and 2024, cumulative inflation in the United States was approximately 31% according to Bureau of Labor Statistics data. That means something that cost $100 in 2014 cost approximately $131 in 2024. Or to flip the math, a dollar in 2024 bought what 76 bought in 2014. Linda's $10,000 was not worth $10,000 anymore. It was worth approximately $7,600 in 2014 purchasing power. She had lost $2,400, not through any risky investment, not through any mistake, but through the simple act of doing nothing. The savings account did not protect her money. It provided a comfortable illusion while inflation systematically devoured almost a quarter of her wealth. This is what most people do not realize about savings accounts. The interest rate is not just low. It is so low that it doesn't even come close to keeping pace with inflation. The average savings account in America pays about 0.4% annually as of early 2024. Inflation over the past few years has averaged between 3 and 7% annually. That gap between what your money earns and what inflation takes is your real return. And for savings accounts, the real return is deeply consistently negative. You are not earning 0.4%. You are losing 2 to 6% per year in purchasing power while feeling like you are being responsible. Let me show you the math over different time horizons because the compounding nature of this loss is what makes it genuinely devastating. Take $100,000 sitting in a savings account earning 0.4% while inflation runs at an average of 3.5% annually. A relatively moderate assumption based on long-term historical averages. After 1 year, your nominal balance is $1,400. Your real purchasing power is approximately $97,000. You have lost about $3,000 in real value. That's painful, but not catastrophic. After 5 years, your nominal balance is approximately $84,000. Your real purchasing power is approximately $16,000. You have lost 16% of your money, gone, evaporated into the gap between negligible interest and persistent inflation. After 10 years, your nominal balance is about $14,000. Your real purchasing power is approximately $71,000. You have lost $29,000 in real value, nearly 30% of everything you thought you were protecting. And after 20 years, the math becomes genuinely alarming. Your nominal balance is around $18,000. Your real purchasing power is approximately $50,000. You have lost half of your money. Not through a market crash, not through fraud, not through any visible event, through the invisible, relentless erosion of purchasing power while you watched a number on a screen and felt safe. And here's where it gets really interesting. The bank that held Linda's money for 10 years was not just storing it passively. They were lending it out, using her deposits to fund mortgages at 4 to 7%, business loans at 8 to 12%, credit cards at 18 to 25%. They took her money, paid her essentially nothing, lent it at massive multiples of what they paid her, and kept the difference. The average bank earns a net interest margin of around 3%, the spread between what they pay depositors and what they earn on loans. On Linda's $10,000, the bank earned approximately $300 per year, while she paid her $6. Over 10 years, they made roughly $3,000 from her money, while she lost $2,400 in purchasing power. She subsidized their profits while her wealth decayed. This is not a conspiracy. It's just the business model of banking, and it works because most people never do the math. Now, you might be thinking that some interest is better than no interest, and at least a savings account can't lose money the way stocks can. And this is the psychological trap at the heart of the savings account illusion. The confusion between nominal safety and real safety. A savings account cannot lose nominal value. Your balance will never go down unless you withdraw. That feels safe because our brains are wired to fear visible losses far more than invisible ones. Behavioral economists call this loss aversion, and it is one of the most powerful forces in human decision-making. Seeing your investment portfolio drop from $100,000 to $85,000 feels like a catastrophe. Red numbers, smaller balance, visceral pain. Watching your savings account hold steady at $100,000 while its purchasing power drops to $85,000 feels nothing. Same number, same balance, no alarm bells, but the outcome is identical. You have lost $15,000 in real value either way. The only difference is whether you can see it happening. The stock market makes its losses visible, which triggers fear and often panic selling. The savings account makes its losses invisible, which triggers complacency and often decades of inaction. Both are losses. Only one feels like a loss. And ironically, the one that feels safer is often the one that guarantees you will lose money, while the one that feels dangerous is the one that historically builds wealth over time. The S&P 500 has returned an average of approximately 10% annually over the past century, significantly outpacing inflation and building real wealth for patient investors. Savings accounts have returned an average of less than 1% annually over the same period, consistently failing to keep pace with inflation and systematically destroying real wealth for their holders. The safe choice is not safe. It is a slow, invisible bleed that most people do not diagnose until decades have passed and the damage is done. Let me talk about high-yield savings accounts because I know someone is about to comment that they earn 4 or 5% at an online bank, and therefore this does not apply to them. High-yield savings accounts are better than traditional savings accounts, meaningfully better. At 5% interest with 3.5% inflation, you're actually earning a positive real return of about 1.5%. Your money is growing in purchasing power rather than shrinking. That is a genuine improvement. And if you're going to hold cash, holding it in a high-yield account is dramatically superior to holding it in a traditional bank account. But there are two important caveats. First, high-yield rates are not permanent. The 5% rates available in 2024 exist because the Federal Reserve raised interest rates to combat inflation. When inflation moderates and the Fed lowers rates, which it historically always does eventually, those high-yield accounts will drop back to 1 or 2%, and you will be back in negative real return territory. You cannot rely on current high-yield rates as a permanent solution. Second, even at 5%, a savings account still massively underperforms equity investments over the long term. If you have money you will not need for 5 years or more, putting it in a savings account instead of a diversified index fund means you're leaving substantial wealth on the table. An index fund averaging 8% real returns, which is conservative historically, will double your purchasing power every 9 years. A high-yield savings account earning 1.5% real will double your purchasing power every 48 years. The difference over a 20-year period is not marginal. It is transformational. $100,000 in an index fund at 8% real becomes approximately $466,000 in 20 years. The same $100,000 in a high-yield savings account at 1.5% real becomes approximately $135,000. The safe choice costs you $331,000 in this scenario. Savings accounts, even good ones, are for money you need soon, not money you are building wealth with. Here is how to think about cash and savings accounts in a way that protects you from the savings account illusion. Cash is a tool, not a destination. It is useful for specific purposes. Emergency funds that need to be immediately accessible, short-term savings for purchases within the next 1 to 2 years, and a psychological buffer that helps you stay invested during market volatility because you know your immediate needs are covered. For these purposes, a high-yield savings account is appropriate. Ideally, one paying for % or more in today's environment, which you can find at online banks like Marcus, Ally, or Wealthfront. But beyond these limited purposes, cash is a depreciating asset. Every dollar you hold beyond what you need for liquidity and short-term goals is a dollar that is slowly dying. The opportunity cost of excess cash is not just the interest you are not earning. It is the compounding equity returns you are not capturing year after year, decade after decade. The framework I use is this. Calculate your monthly expenses and multiply by 6. That is your emergency fund. The money that stays in a high-yield savings account as your financial foundation. Add to that any planned major purchases within the next 2 years. A car down payment, a vacation, a wedding in the same account. Beyond that, every dollar should be working in assets that outpace inflation. Diversified index funds for most people, real estate for those with the knowledge and capital, other investments appropriate to your situation and risk tolerance. The emergency fund is not an investment. It is insurance against life's unpredictability. And the cost of that insurance is the real returns you sacrifice by holding cash. But like all insurance, you want to pay for what you need, and not a dollar more. Holding $50,000 in a savings account when your emergency fund requirement is $20,000 is not being safe. It's paying $30,000 worth of insurance premiums against a risk that doesn't exist. Let me talk about the specific actions you should take this week to escape the savings account illusion, because understanding the problem is not enough. You need to act on it. The first action is to calculate your actual emergency fund requirement. Take your true monthly expenses, not your income, your expenses, and multiply by 6. If you spend $4,000 per month, your emergency fund is $24,000. If you spend $6,000 per month, it is $36,000. Write that number down. The second action is to move any cash beyond your emergency fund and short-term goals into a brokerage account and invest it in a low-cost diversified index fund. For most people, a total stock market index fund like VTI or an S&P 500 fund like VO is appropriate. These funds charge almost nothing in fees, provide instant diversification across hundreds or thousands of companies, and have historically outpaced inflation by 5 to 7% annually over the long term. If you have $30,000 in savings but only need $20,000 for your emergency fund, the extra $10,000 should not sit in cash. It should be invested. The third action is to make sure the cash you do hold is earning as much as possible. If your emergency fund is in a traditional bank account earning 0.4%, you're losing money unnecessarily. Move it to a high-yield savings account earning 4 to 5%. This takes less than an hour to set up online and will earn you hundreds or thousands more per year on the same cash. The fourth action is to set up automatic investments so that future savings bypass the cash trap entirely. Set up a recurring monthly transfer from your checking account to your brokerage account and set that transfer to automatically purchase your chosen index fund. This removes the decision point, removes the temptation to let cash accumulate, and ensures that your money goes to work immediately rather than sitting in a savings account losing purchasing power. Right now, you probably see yourself as someone who's being careful with money, keeping cash and savings, avoiding risk, protecting what you have worked hard to earn. That identity feels responsible. It feels like the opposite of gambling. It feels like what a prudent, mature adult does with their money. But there is another way to see it. Keeping excess cash in a savings account is not avoiding risk. It is choosing a different risk. The guaranteed risk that inflation will erode your purchasing power year after year. The stock market goes up and down unpredictably. Inflation goes in one direction relentlessly. You're not protecting your money by keeping it in savings. You're hiding it in a room that's room temperature freezer and wondering why there's less of it every time you check. The savings account illusion works because it exploits your fear of visible losses to trap you in invisible ones. The only escape is to understand what your money is actually doing. Not what the number says, but what it can buy, and to act on that understanding, even when it feels less safe than doing nothing. I've spent way too much time thinking about this stuff so you don't have to. If this changed how you see your savings account, hit that like button and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.